Have you ever stood in a room full of people and felt completely alone? I have. I remember one evening not too long ago, I was standing in a crowd, the kind where everyone's dressed up, smiling, talking, taking selfies, pretending. And I was just there, silent, watching, and a question hit me right in the gut. Why does it feel like no one really sees each other anymore? We're connected more than ever, likes, DMs, comments. But somehow we've forgotten what it feels like to feel, to love openly, to love ourselves, to love others in their raw, unfiltered truth. I want to talk to you today about something that sounds simple but is anything but feeling the love. Not the kind that's superficial or easy. I'm talking about the kind that changes your life, the kind that demands courage, the kind that starts with you. So let's walk together through pain, through power, and into purpose. Let's learn how to feel the love again. The first door. You are worthy of love. We're taught from a young age to earn love. Be quiet, be polite, be agreeable, be helpful, be smart, but not too smart, be pretty, but not too bold, be strong, but not too much, shrink, smile, say what they want to hear, do what makes them happy. And somewhere in the middle of all that shaping and molding, we start to lose ourselves, not all at once, but piece by piece, until one day we look in the mirror and we don't recognize who we see. We ask ourselves quietly, what happened to me? I want you to think about this not as a rhetorical question, but as a real, raw invitation. When did you start believing that love had conditions? When did love stop being something you deserve and start being something you had to earn? I remember speaking to a woman, let's call her Claire. She had the job, the car, the accolades, the wardrobe, the poise. On paper, she was untouchable. But during a private session at a workshop, she began to cry, not a soft tear down the cheek, but the kind of cry that shakes you. She looked at me and said, I don't know who I am without my achievements. If I stop performing, will anyone still love me? And that cracked me open, because I knew exactly what she meant. Maybe you have too. We create these roles, these identities we wear like armor. Overachiever, caretaker, perfectionist, fixer, hero, ghost. And we wear them so long we start to believe that only in those roles do we deserve love. But here's the truth, you were born worthy. Before the resume, before the heartbreak, before the mistake you can't forgive yourself for. You didn't come into this world needing to prove anything. And even now, with all your scars and stories, you still don't. Love is not a currency, it is not a transaction. It is not a reward for good behavior or success or sacrifice. It is your birthright. But I get it, sometimes we've been taught otherwise. Maybe someone made you feel disposable. Maybe you were only praised when you won, only noticed when you served a purpose. Maybe someone walked away and you made it mean something about you. So now you stay busy, you overfunction, you please. You hustle for worth you already have. We get so used to chasing that we forget we're already enough. And then we start mistaking attention for affection. We start accepting crumbs when we deserve the whole meal. We start believing that if we just do more, we'll finally feel whole. But the wholeness never comes that way, because it never came from others. It comes from coming home to yourself. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it, not in your head, but in your heart. If you stopped performing, if you dropped the mask, would you still love you? Because that's where it begins. Not in the applause, not in someone's validation, but in the stillness, in the moment you stand in front of the mirror, look into your own eyes and say, I see you, and I'm not going anywhere. That's love. Love that doesn't flinch when you're tired. Love that doesn't leave when you mess up. Love that doesn't disappear when you say no. That is the love you deserve. And it begins inside, right now, right here. You have survived things that could have destroyed you. You have carried burdens that weren't yours to carry. You have rebuilt yourself in silence when no one even noticed you were breaking. And through all of it, you are still here, still breathing, still showing up. Don't tell me you're not worthy of love, because that strength, that tenderness, that is exactly what makes you worthy. So stop fighting for scraps. Stop chasing people who cannot see you. Stop bending into shapes that don't fit just to be held by hands that don't know how to hold. Instead, stand as you are, whole, messy, brave, still healing. And let love start with you, because that's the first door. And once you walk through, everything begins to change. The pain isn't the enemy. It's the doorway. Love isn't just a feeling. It's a decision. A fierce, intentional act of choosing again and again, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. And sometimes love isn't soft or sweet. Sometimes it brings us to our knees. Sometimes it shows up in the form of grief so heavy we wonder if we'll ever stand again. I want to tell you about my friend James. A kind man, quiet strength in his presence, the type of person who carries the weight of the world without complaint. He lost his wife to cancer, a long, brutal journey that stole pieces of her one day at a time. They were high school sweethearts. They'd built a life, a home, memories layered on top of memories. And then just like that, she was gone. In the weeks after her death, James kept showing up. He went to work, picked up groceries, smiled politely when people asked how he was. But I could see it in his eyes. He was hollow. There was a stillness to him that used to be filled with laughter, with mischief. He didn't cry, not at first. He just went quiet. One night, months later, we sat on his porch, and out of nowhere, he said, if this is what love costs, I don't want it anymore. There was no anger in his voice, just exhaustion. Grief had drained the color from his world, and he couldn't remember what life felt like before the ache. He wasn't just mourning her death. He was mourning the part of himself that had died with her. But here's what he didn't realize in that moment. Love didn't die with her. It lived on. It lived in the way he checked on her mother every week, in the way he still made her favorite coffee blend in the morning, even though she wasn't there to drink it. It was in the way he spoke about her, not in past tense, but as if she were still shaping him, still guiding him. His pain wasn't evidence that love had failed. It was proof that something real had existed. That's the thing no one tells you. Grief is love with nowhere to go. It's the aftermath of connection. The echo of what was. It's brutal, but it's sacred. So often we try to escape pain. We numb it, deny it, outrun it. We distract ourselves with work, with noise, with anything that keeps us from feeling too deeply. We convince ourselves that if we never care too much, we'll never hurt too much. That if we never let anyone all the way in, they can't break us. But that's a lie. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is a signal, a compass. It tells you what mattered. It tells you where your heart lived, and if you let it, pain doesn't just tear you down, it breaks you open. It expands your capacity for empathy, for depth, for love that is rooted not in ease, but in truth. You see, real love will wreck you and rebuild you. It will bring joy that lifts you and loss that levels you. But it's all part of the same story. You can't have the light without the shadow. You can't have the connection without the risk. To love at all is to open yourself to pain. But to close yourself to pain is to close yourself off from life. And I know that hurts. I know it feels safer to shut down, to say never again, to guard your heart like a fortress. But I also know that every time you choose to feel, you choose to live. Every time you let the tears fall, you're honoring what was real. You're honoring you. James still grieves years later, but he's no longer numb. He tells her stories to their nieces. He volunteers at the hospital where she had her treatments. He remarried not because he replaced her, but because his heart grew big enough to hold both the sorrow of losing her and the joy of finding love again. That's what pain can do. If you let it, it can teach you to feel more, not less. It can turn you into someone who loves even more fiercely, because you know just how fragile it all is. So don't run, don't numb out, don't harden yourself to avoid the hurt. Because if you can still feel pain, it means your heart is alive. And a living heart, no matter how bruised, still has the power to love. Courage means opening when you want to close. We live in a world that rewards the tough exterior, the armor, the ability to move on, stay unbothered, play it cool. We're conditioned to bounce back quickly, to not need anyone, to wear our independence like a badge of honor. But let me tell you something real. There is nothing brave about closing your heart to protect your ego. That's not power. That's fear dressed up as control. And I get it, I really do. You've been lied to. You've been ghosted, betrayed, abandoned. Maybe someone you trusted deeply turned into someone you no longer recognized. And in the aftermath of that kind of pain, a part of you made a decision. Never again. Never again would you let anyone in that deep. Never again would you hand someone the ability to hurt you. So you built walls, slowly but intentionally. You stopped sharing too much. You stayed guarded. You played it safe. And at first, it feels like strength, it feels like self-preservation. But what you don't realize is that the same walls keeping the pain out are also keeping love out. The real life-shifting, soul-expanding kind of love. It doesn't come through a locked door. It needs to be invited in. An invitation requires vulnerability. Now let me be clear, vulnerability is not weakness. It's not naive. It's not walking blindly into the fire and pretending you won't get burned. Vulnerability is the fiercest kind of courage. It's standing in front of someone emotionally bare and saying, this is me, all of me. Not just the highlight reel, not just the version I think you'll like, but the real, raw, messy, beautiful truth of who I am. Will you still love me here? That's terrifying. And yet that's where connection lives. I've seen people step into war zones, run into danger, carry others on their backs without blinking. But those same people, some of them would rather face enemy fire than sit across from someone they love and say, I'm scared, I need you, I'm hurting. Because emotional exposure feels riskier than physical danger. When you open your heart, you open yourself to the possibility of rejection, disappointment, abandonment. And for so many of us, that risk feels too great. So we shut down, we keep it surface level. We hide behind sarcasm, ambition, performance. We protect the parts of ourselves that feel too tender to be seen. But here's the truth you can't selectively numb. When you numb the pain, you numb the joy. When you shut down your heart to avoid rejection, you also shut it down to love. You can't armor up and still expect intimacy to find you. It doesn't work that way. Real love, transformational love, requires a kind of faith, not just in other people, but in yourself. Faith that if it falls apart, you'll survive. Faith that even if your heart gets broken again, you are strong enough to heal. Faith that no matter what happens, you will never again abandon yourself in an effort to be loved by someone else. That's the shift. You don't open your heart because you trust everyone. You open your heart because you trust you. You trust that you've learned enough, grown enough, healed enough to choose wisely. And if someone proves they're not safe for your heart, you walk away without losing yourself. But you can't spend your life waiting to be 100% sure it won't hurt. Because love, real love, is always there. Are no guarantees, no perfect people, no fail-proof path. But here's what is guaranteed. If you keep choosing isolation, if you keep locking your heart behind walls, if you keep pretending you don't need anyone, you will feel safe. But you will also feel profoundly alone. You will avoid the pain, yes, but you will also miss the beauty, the laughter, the companionship, the growth that only comes when two people say, I see you, I'm with you. Let's build something real. Love is a gamble, but so is everything worth having. So here's what I want to say to the part of you that's scared, the part of you that still flinches when someone gets too close. I see you. I know what it feels like to be burned, to be left, to wonder if your heart can take another hit. But I also know this, you're still here, which means your heart is still beating, which means love is still possible. So take the chance, not recklessly, not without discernment, but with courage. Courage to try again, courage to be seen. Courage to be known, not just for the parts of you that are polished and perfect, but for the parts that are still healing. Because on the other side of that risk, that's where everything real begins. Love others with the fullness you crave. This is where the shift happens. The moment you stop waiting to be loved the way you've always longed for, and start loving others with that same intensity, that same depth, that same honesty, not from need, not from emptiness, but from overflow, from a well inside you that you filled by doing the hard work, claiming your worth, facing your pain, and daring to open your heart again. You see, real love isn't a transaction. And yet that's how most of us were taught to love. We're conditioned to keep score. I'll be there for you if you're there for me. I'll tell you how I feel if you go first. I'll forgive you if you earn it. But that's not love. That's bargaining. That's fear. That's protection wrapped in the language of connection. Because true love, the kind that heals, the kind that reaches into someone's soul and says, you matter just as you are, that love isn't conditional. It isn't earned. It isn't kept in reserve until someone performs well enough to deserve it. Love is not a contract. It's a commitment. It's a choice to show up again and even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts, even when there's no guaranteed return. Because when love flows from a place of wholeness, not desperation, it becomes a gift instead of a bargain. I once spoke with a man who mentored foster kids. He wasn't a teacher, not a social worker, not a counselor, just a regular guy with a quiet strength. I asked him why he volunteered his time, why he gave so much of himself to these kids, many of whom didn't even say thank you. He looked me in the eye and said, "Because I know what it feels like to be forgotten." I refuse to let them feel that. That is love. Love that remembers. Love that shows up. Love that's not dependent on how it's received. Because when you've walked through your own darkness, when you've stared at your reflection and decided I am enough, you stop needing people to validate your worth and start seeing them through the eyes of compassion. You become the person who listens without interrupting, who celebrates someone else's success without comparison, who looks someone in the eyes and actually sees them, not their status, not their image, but their soul. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you love people from that place, not to get love back, but because it's who you are now, you begin to receive love in its most honest form, not forced, not manipulated, but magnetized. Because people can feel that kind of love. It's different, it's safe, it's real. But let's be honest, loving like this is hard. It's hard to keep giving when you're not sure if it'll be received. It's hard to show up when no one claps for it. It's hard to choose compassion over retaliation, grace over pride, empathy over ego. But every time you do, you're changing the world in small seismic ways. You hold the door for someone who's used to being ignored. You remember a birthday that no one else remembered. You make a phone call just to say, "I see you. You matter." And maybe they don't say it back. Maybe they don't even know how to receive it. That's okay, because love isn't about what you get. It's about who you are. When you love others with the fullness you once craved, you're not just healing them. You're healing yourself. You're turning your pain into purpose, your longing into legacy. You're saying, "I've been where you are. I know how it feels, and I'm choosing to love you anyway." This is how we create the ripple, not with grand gestures, but with consistent, radical presence. And the truth is, this world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more wholehearted ones. People who are willing to love without condition. People who are willing to give without fear of loss. People who love not to be impressive, but to be impactful. So if you want love, be love. Not the kind of love that waits, but the kind that leads. Not the kind that demands, but the kind that gives. Not the kind that keeps score, but the kind that keeps showing up. This isn't about being a martyr. It's about being authentic. You're not here to prove your worth through overgiving. You're here to share your worth, to pour it into the lives of others, not to be needed, but to be true. And when you live that way, people feel it, the world feels it. And you, my friend, become the very love you once waited for. The love you seek is the legacy you leave. This journey ends where it truly begins, with legacy. And not the kind written in titles, bank accounts, or applause. Not the accolades they hang on walls or the achievements carved into stone. The real legacy is quieter, but far more powerful. It's the imprint your love leaves behind in the hearts of others. At the end of your life, no one's gonna ask how many promotions you had, or how many followers, or what kind of car you drove. They're going to remember how you made them feel, whether you were present, whether your love was safe, fierce, forgiving. They're going to remember your laugh, your warmth, the way you showed up when no one else did. That's the mark. That's the story people will tell long after you're gone. Love isn't just an emotion, it's a force, a creative healing, shaping force that leaves behind echoes long after the moment has passed. Let me ask you something that might hit deep. When you leave a room, how do people feel? Lighter. Seem calmer, or are they left wondering if they matter? That's your legacy in motion. In every conversation, every pause to listen, every moment you choose kindness over ego, empathy over judgment. Every time you pick up the phone, forgive the past, hold someone's gaze a few seconds longer to let them know, "I see you." We like to think legacy is something we build later over time, but the truth is, you're building it right now. With every interaction, every small decision, every way you choose to show up with love when it's easier not to, love leaves footprints. And those footprints, they become paths for other people to follow. Your children, your friends, the stranger you smiled at on the train, the coworker who was one more bad day away from giving up until you said, "I've got you." There's a man I met years ago who told me a story I'll never forget. He grew up in a rough neighborhood, poverty, violence, the whole thing. His father wasn't around, his mother worked 3 jobs, and by the time he was 14, he was angry, closed off, failing school. Everyone had written him off, except for one teacher. This teacher pulled him aside one day and said, "I see who you really are, and I won't give up on you, so don't you give up on yourself." And that one moment, that one act of love, it shifted something. That boy grew up, went to college, became a youth counselor, and now he says the same words to the kids who come through his door. "I see you, I won't give up on you." One moment of love changed an entire lineage. That's legacy. It's not in what you take, it's in what you leave behind. In the courage to live with your heart wide open, even when it hurts. In the power of staying soft in a world that tries to make you hard. In the grace you offer others because you've tasted grace yourself. Love with your hands, with your time, with your voice, not for attention, not for reciprocation, but because love is what builds things. It builds people. It builds families. It builds bridges between cultures, faiths, generations. We live in a culture that glorifies hustle and more hustle. But the people you remember when you're older won't be the ones who work the most hours. It'll be the ones who loved you when you couldn't love yourself. The ones who sat with you in silence, who didn't rush your healing, who reminded you you matter. So what will you be remembered for? Will you be remembered for the love you gave when no one was watching? For the way you made people feel safe? For the way you turned pain into purpose, walls into windows, silence into song? Let that be the question you ask yourself, not just someday, because legacy isn't something you leave. It's something you live. Every time you forgive someone who hurt you, every time you give more than you take, every time you choose truth over comfort, every time you remind someone they are not alone, you are carving a path made not of stone or steel, but of love. The kind of love that doesn't die when you do. The kind that multiplies, the kind that passes from one heart to the next long after your name fades from memory. And if all you leave behind is the love you gave, let it be enough. Let it be everything. That is the kind of legacy the world needs more of. have. And it starts with you, right here, right now. Choose love. Let it echo, let it last. Feel the love, be the love. Let me leave you with this. You don't have to earn love. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to beg for it. That the world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people who are willing to feel again, to stand in their truth and still choose love again and again and again. So wherever you are right now, I want you to place your hand over your heart. Feel that. That's proof. You are here. You are alive and you are loved. Now go out into the world and let them feel it too.